Okay, so let's try to understand exception handling. Okay, so before understanding what do you mean by exception handling, first of all let's try to understand what do you mean by exception. Okay, so first of all let's try to understand what do you mean by exception. Okay, so what do you mean by exception? Exception is nothing but some issue. Okay, some exception occurred at the time of executing your program. Okay, so while executing your program, due to some issue, your program is not able to executing properly, or your program is getting terminated abnormally. Okay, so that is nothing but exception. Okay, see, for example, let's say I have a class test is there. Okay, public static void main method. Here let's say I'm writing some piece of code. Let's say system.out.println of 10/2, system.out.println of 20/2, system.out.println of 30/2, system.out.println of 40/2, system.out.println of 50/2. Okay, for example, I have written this program. Okay, so now once I have written the program, what I will do? I will try to compile my code. Okay, how will compile my code? Javac test.java. Okay, after compiling, then I will try to execute. Let's say Java test. Okay, whenever I'm trying to execute now, who will get the request? The request will goes to the JVM. Okay, what this JVM it will do? It will comes to the main method. Okay, and from this main method, JVM will try to execute your program line by line. Okay, so first of all, it will execute this first line. It will give me the output as 5, then 10, then 15, 20 and 25. Okay, so JVM will try to call to this main method and it will try to execute each and every line, one line after another line. Now your main method got completed, your JVM will come out. So that means it is nothing but your smooth execution program. Your whatever you have written the piece of code inside this main method, all this line of code it will get executed. So that means it is nothing but your program does not have any issue. Okay, so that means it is nothing but smooth execution program, right? So but let's say in my code what I did here, instead of writing this 30/2, what I did define here 30/0, let's say. Okay, so now what will happen if I am trying to execute my code? Now the request will goes to the JVM. JVM will try to call to this main method. Okay, into this main method, first line it will execute, it will calculate, it will give me the output as 5. In the second line it will give me the output as 10. But now while trying to performing this operation, or when it is trying to calculate 30/0 here itself, so that means so something divided by 0 is not possible in Java. So then your JVM will not be able to calculate this piece of code, right? So that means at this point of time itself, okay, as JVM will not be able to perform this operation. Okay, why? Because something divided by 0, JVM will not be able to calculate, right? So that is why at this point of time you will face one exception saying arithmetic exception. Okay, so due to this line of code you face some exception which is nothing but arithmetic exception. Because of this exception, you will not be, so JVM will not be able to execute the rest of the code. So that means this piece of code will not get executed, right? Your program will get terminated at this point of time. Okay, because of this exception or because of this piece of code. Okay, so that is why this is nothing but exception. Okay, and while performing or while executing your program itself, because of some piece of code you are facing some exception. Okay, so due to which your program will get terminated abnormally. Abnormally means you will not get the smooth execution, right? So that is nothing but exception. Okay, now the terminology is nothing but exception handling. What do you mean by exception handling now? Exception handling means while performing your or while executing your program, if any exception occurred, now how you are going to handle that exception is nothing but exception handling. Okay, see, for example, let's say you are traveling from your home to office, right? So while you are traveling from your home to office, okay, so at this point of time, okay, let's say there are huge traffic jam is there. Okay, there are some road construction is going on, or there is some accident happen. Okay, so due to which it is there are a lot of traffic jam is there. So that is why you are not you face some traffic here. Okay, so because of this traffic jam you will not be able to proceed further, or you will not be able to going to the office, right? So that means while you are performing the operation you face some exception here. Okay, at the runtime or while performing the operation itself you face some exception, due to which you are not able to proceed further. So that is nothing but exception. So that is why you will come back to your home, you will not be able to proceed to the, or you will not be able to go to the office because of this exception, or because of this problem, or because of this issue. That is nothing but exception. Now what do you mean by exception handling? Exception handling is nothing but if while performing the operation, if you face any issue, right, or if you face any exception here, let's say there is some traffic jam is there, so instead of returning back, or instead of doing the abnormal termination, you will find another way of going to the office, right? You will find another bypass road to continue your journey itself. So that is nothing but exception handling. Okay, if you face some exception over here, instead of coming back to home, you will find another way of going to the office. So that is nothing but exception handling. Exception handling means while performing some operation, if any exception will occur, instead of doing the abnormal termination, you want to proceed further. Okay, you don't want to do the abnormal termination. Okay, you want to proceed further by handling that exception itself. So that is nothing but exception handling. Okay, I hope you are clear what do you mean by exception handling, right? Okay, so let's say I'm taking here class test. Okay, main method. Here let's say I'm trying to write here system.out.println of 10/2. Okay, (20/2), 30/2, 40/2 and 50/2. Okay, now let's say if I'm trying to execute my program, so then what will happen? JVM it will comes to this main method and it will try to execute line by line, right? So then I will get the output as a smooth execution program itself or not. So if I'm trying to execute now, so if you will see here, now we are getting all this value properly, right? So that means my code executed smoothly. So it is nothing but smooth execution program. Okay, but let's say what I did here, instead of taking here 30/2, I am taking here 30/0. Okay, so that means what will happen? JVM will not be able to calculate this piece of line, this piece of code, right? So that means what will happen? Whenever JVM it will come in order to execute this program, then
it will first of all JVM will call this main method. First of all it will try and it will give me the output as 5, then it will give me the output as 10. Then at this point of time, okay, so what will happen, JVM will not be able to calculate this 30 by 0. So then what we will get here, we will get here the arithmetic exception. Okay, so at this point of time itself we will get the arithmetic exception. Okay, so that means you will not be able to proceed further. Okay, so that means at this point of at this line itself you will get the exception, and the rest of the remaining piece of code will not get execute, because from this piece of code itself you are getting the abnormal termination. Your program will terminated abnormally from this line of code. Okay, so if I'm trying to execute now, see, so first of all it will execute 5, then 10, then at this line of code itself you are getting the exception. Which exception it got occur? Arithmetic exception. Okay, and this exception occurred why? Because of divided by 0. And where it got occur? This line number 6 itself. Okay, so that means because of this line of code you are getting the exception. Okay,
Okay, so now if you will see here itself, while in this piece of code, as this piece of code will not be able to execute by JVM, because something divided by 0 is not possible in Java. So that is why you will get the arithmetic exception over here. Okay, so that means if any exception occur, then how you are going to handle that exception? See, how we are going to handle that exception is nothing but by using two things. One is try block, one is catch block. Okay, so that means if any exception occur, then how you are going to handle that exception is nothing but by using try and catch block. Okay, so what do you mean by try block and what do you mean by catch block? Let's try to understand. Okay, let's take this example. While okay, in this program I have written this program. In this program, at this piece of code, it is causing this exception itself or not? So the piece of code which is causing the exception, this piece of code we are calling it as nothing but risky code. Okay, so what do you mean by risky code? Because of which piece of line of code you are facing the exception, that is nothing but your risky code. Okay, so always you need to surround this risky code inside this try block. Okay, what I mean is, how can I write this program? System.out.println of, let's say you are writing here 30 by 0. System.out.println of 40 by 2. System.out.println of 50 by 2. Okay. So if you will see here, if I will write this piece of code, only this piece of code, then at this particular position, at this point of time, you will face some arithmetic exception itself or not. Okay, so that means because of this line of code you are facing some exception. Okay, so that means this line of code is nothing but your risky code. Okay, so that means you need to surround this risky code inside the try block. Okay, you need to surround this piece of code inside this try block. Okay, now which exception it will get occur? Arithmetic exception. So that means with respect to this exception type, you will write one catch block. Okay, catch of which exception you are getting? Arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception E. Okay, so then here itself you can write the handling logic. Okay, any piece of code if you write, let's say I'm writing here 30 by 2. Okay, so that means what will happen now? If I will try to execute my program now, what will happen? How I'll execute my program? Java test. If I'll execute, now the request will goes to the JVM. Now JVM will comes to which method? Main method. In the first line, it will be able to calculate. I will get the output as 5. In the second line, I will get the output as 10. But why then it will come to this try block? Okay. Inside this try block, what you are doing here? System.out.println 30 by 0. Okay. So because of this line of code, you will get some exception itself or not. Which exception it occurred? The arithmetic exception. Okay. Once this exception occurred, then the respective catch block with that exception, it will catch. This exception object got catch. This exception object got caught here in this catch block. Okay. Now, if there is some exception occur, then it will check is there any respective catch block it is there with respect to this exception or not. It is there. Now it will execute system.out.println now 30 by 2, which is nothing but 15. So now if you will see here, instead of terminating your program from here itself, now you are able to proceed further. It will give me the 15, then the rest of the code will get executed now. Okay, 40 by 2 is nothing but 20, 50 by 2 is nothing but you will get the rest, you will get the output as 25.
So now here we are getting this exception, right? So at this point of line, we are getting this arithmetic exception. Okay, so then what we understood? So this piece of line itself, it is causing the exception itself or not? So if any line or because of which piece of code you are getting the exception, that is nothing but risky code, right? So where you need to write this risky code? So you need to surround this risky code inside the try block. Okay, so we need to surround this risky code inside this try block. We need to write this piece of code inside the try block. Okay, and because of this line, which exception we will get? We will get the arithmetic exception, right? So with respect to that arithmetic exception, we are going to write the corresponding catch block, like catch arithmetic exception A. Okay, so where we are going to write the handling logic. Okay, any handling logic we can write here. Okay, if any exception will occur, then how we are going to handle it. Okay, so let's say I'm writing here 30 by 3, let's say. Okay, so now what will happen? How my execution will be happen? Whenever JVM it will comes to this main method, first of all this line of code it will get execute. So I will get the output as 5, then 10. Then whenever I'll try to execute this piece of line of code, okay, so I will get which exception? We will get the arithmetic exception itself or not. So that arithmetic exception, it will get caught here inside this catch block, and this piece of handling piece of code it will get execute, and I will get the output as 10, right? So then so that means you are handling this exception, so that means there will be no exception will occur and there will be no abnormal termination will be happen. Okay, so that is why what will happen now, the rest of the remaining piece of code it will get execute, and you will be having the smooth execution. So you will get the output here as 20 and 25. Let's try to execute. Okay, so now we are getting all the value. Okay, even though we are facing the exception, now how we are going to handle this exception? By using the try and catch block. Inside this try block we are going to write the risky code. Risky code means the piece of code because of which you are facing the exception. Okay, that you need to surround with this try block, and the respective handling code, that we need to write inside the catch block with respect to that exception. Okay, so that means this catch block piece of code will get execute if this exception occur, and it will have the smooth execution, and this remaining piece of code also will get execute. Clear?
So this is nothing but how you are going to handle the exception. Okay, so this is nothing but, so how you are going to handle the exception is nothing but by using the try and catch block. Okay, and what do you mean by try block, and which piece of code you need to write inside this try block? The risky code. What do you mean by risky code? Because of which line of code, because of which piece of code you are facing the exception. Okay, so that you need to write in the try block. Okay, and the handling code, how you are going to handle that exception if any exception occur, that piece of logic you need to write inside the catch block. Okay, so that means how can we handle the exception is nothing but by using the try and catch block. Okay, so this is nothing but exception, and how you can handle the exception is nothing but exception handling. Okay.